Oh, and good evening. It's March 17th, 2026, and we are continuing our discussion collection in our Outside the Class series. So this series, from the Bible Project, covers the entire TaNaK, also known as the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. Those source videos are available for your review. They're on TheDustyFeet.com in the Outside the Class section. Because the intent of Outside the Class for you to listen to that in-class lecture first, those short overview videos. Then we just expand the conversation. Try to keep these to about 15 minutes. Make them easy to catch up on. So we're on a quest, scroll by scroll, book by book, a journey through this collection, just maybe with a fun and different twist. Our hope with the Dusty Feet is to foster discussion and to help build and support communities. If you're not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. TheDustyFeet.com. That's our primary place to find everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Substack. Link is in the description below. It's designed around the written and spoken text. It's a place to connect to ourselves and others. 3. Facebook at The Dusty Feet. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. 4. And as always, you're welcome to send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. These places, they will be moderated and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation. Belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. Oh, and of course, before we forget, if you do find these kinds of podcasts useful, please click the subscribe button. But those reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, that is when you click that like button, because that is how YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. So in this series, right, we're going to cover the entire TaNaK, the Old Testament. We're just doing it in the original order of the Hebrew scriptures. And always remember, the videos we discuss are just the tip of an iceberg. They are part of an entire learning series I highly recommend. And all of them are available at the Bible Project. We ask many questions about all kinds of things. Answers, though, well, we'll see. So, Samuel, this is the second scroll. This is our part 18. So last week, the troops had been rallied, formation set up, the leadership given instructions. Let the battle commence. And per the people's wishes, well, David, he defers to go into battle. His reputation is as one of those leaders who leads by example, at least on the battlefield anyways. But they, the people, they want him to stay back. David listens, he acquiesces. So the battle ensued. The rout was on, and sadly, in the crossfire, 20,000 men died. This battlefield is strewn with bodies, tragedy on a large scale, and all in what one could call a civil war. This is a fight amongst themselves. We have echoes of Saul. This is an inner turmoil. It's egos on display. In a stark contrast to an ego on display, recently in a Bible study I was in, Jay Mahan was talking about the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem during his final week. And we were talking about the little details, right? Including the donkey that he rode in on, right? Because if he's going to be king, shouldn't we see a king riding on a horse? I mean, the king rides on a regal beast, often with an elaborate saddle adorned, because it's obvious he's the king. But when Jesus enters Jerusalem, because Jesus is not looking to be a battle king, to take over, to rule in place of Rome, what Jesus wants are the hearts of his people. That whole story is for another discussion, but the connection is that Jesus is not what they were expecting, just for different reasons. But I bring that up because there's another would-be king riding on a donkey, but for another reason entirely. He is deception. He is, in a sense, he's hiding, he's riding in plain sight, but not on the beast that one would expect of a king. His reasons for riding are to escape, unlike those of Jesus. One is wanted so desperately by the masses to be the conquering king that even the people miss the connection. And then we have this would-be king. Well, he tries to escape. And the people in that one, well, they're not happy at all. It's not the look that they would be expecting. All that said, to realize when we're looking here with Absalom is that Absalom is not with an entourage. Absalom is not with the battle group. And Absalom is not on a beast that would identify him as king. Absalom, he's just riding on a beast of burden. He's cutting across the countryside. There's a lot to discuss here, so I encourage you to talk amongst yourselves about it, because what we see between the lines speaks volumes about what Absalom is actually doing in the state of the battle in his story. Oh, please, a little side note, indulge me. Not that we're lacking for things to talk about amongst ourselves, but there's an interesting little tidbit in this passage, right? For me, personally, it took me back to Tolkien, right? One of my favorite authors, J.R.R. Tolkien. And in a book, he wrote about a forest and its role in battle. That's for you to read on your own. But it might be related to a passage in this story, because we get this little weird tidbit here. It's just something that maybe we don't understand. Maybe it's worthy of discussion. At a minimum, for me, it perked my ears up. 2 Samuel 18 starts in 7 and 8, right? So the people of Israel were defeated there before the servants of David, and the slaughter there that day was great, 20,000 men. For the battle there was spread over the whole countryside, and the forest devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. I just wonder if this little passage was an inspiration for the creativity of Tolkien's writings anyway. You know, Fanghorn Forest and all. Just something to think about. Back to Absalom. So this is how the story unfolds from here, right? It starts in verse 9. Now, Absalom happened to meet the servants of David, for Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a great oak, and his head caught fast in the oak, so that he was left hanging between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him, well, he kept going. When a certain man saw it, and he told Joab, and he said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And then Joab said to the man who told him, Now behold, you saw him? Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, Even if I should receive 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, I would not put out my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Protect for me the young man Absalom. Otherwise, if I had dealt treacherously against his life, and there's nothing hidden from the king, then you yourself would have stood aloof. Then Joab said, I will not waste time here with you. So he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men who carried Joab's armor gathered around, struck Absalom, and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab restrained the people. And they took Absalom, and they cast him into a deep pit in the forest, and erected over him a very great heap of stones. And all Israel fled, each to his own tent. Now Absalom, in his lifetime, had taken and set up for himself a pillar. It's in the King's Valley. For he said, I have no son to preserve my name. So he named the pillar after himself, and it's called Absalom's monument to this day. Short left turn, just for a moment. Quick stop. Absalom's monument. I found it interesting as I read this again that one, it reminded me that the original intended audience, they understood this, right? Maybe even they knew about this monument. But it's so long ago for us and we don't see it. And two, they did not tear down the monument. Stood there to this day. It was a reminder to help them not forget, to remember a past, and maybe hope that they will not make worse choices in the future. Don't know if it worked. Food for thought. Back to Absalom. Well, let's just say instructions were not followed. Personal wisdom was exercised. Now the king's going to have to deal with it. Yeah? Yeah. In my past, as a professional referee, right, I had to make many decisions for the good of the game and for the players involved. Because most involved a sense of fairness and justice, right, as perceived infringements of the games were experienced. Yes? One of my management styles is to give instructions to the team captains before the match, which they pass on as guidance to the players. And you say something like, if you're not prepared for the consequences, those would be cards, then I suggest you don't put us referees in the position to have to make those decisions. Don't do anything that will require our intervention. And then we, as referees, we have our own guidance and our own training on how to deal with all different situations and scenarios. There are a few creative ways to express those thoughts. I have used many different ones myself, but that sentiment is still clear. Act a certain way, violate the laws of the game, and you'll need to be involved. We, as referees, will need to be involved, and you probably will not be happy about the response. David, as king, right, he's supposed to use the Torah as the basis for his decrees, his decisions, his guidance. And remember, quick point, do y'all realize that the king, according to the instructions given by God, we've talked about this before on the Dusty Feet, was to actually write a copy of the Torah, right? The first 5 scrolls, as it were. I suggest its form might have been a little different, but the duty was the same. Write it. And I think in doing that, might that be a physical expression of the wish of an inter-expression? Write it on the scroll, write it on your heart. Does that sound familiar? Does that ring a bell for anyone's school experiences? Because it screams back at me, and for me, more often than not, it began with the words, I will not. Fill in the blank as needed. I have a cute little cloth from Nerd Wax that I use to clean my glasses, and it says, I will not wipe my glasses with my t-shirt. It's in the shape of an old lined page. It's written close to 25 times, but I remember writing so many lines about all kinds of, what I will not do stuff, yeah? And to be truthful, I think some were more taken to heart than others. Especially when I thought that I'd be creative and write, I will, not. Well, you get the picture. I suspect that was not taken to heart. Yet the purpose for the king was to write it by hand and then take it to heart. Write it on your heart. Because Torah is the foundation stone, the keystone. But it's not all inclusive for sure, yeah? It's fair to ask if any of the instructions given by David are in contrast to it, right? That would be good discussion amongst yourselves for another time. But for the sake of this discussion, David, as king, as the authority of the land, well, now he had to deal with something. Insurrection ensued, right? And now David has to be involved in this consequence. We've seen this type of event before. It didn't end well for those in that story. So I wonder what we're going to see here. Well, we're going to be there next week. But for now, David is receiving the news. And let the point not be lost, since we've covered this before, there's also a Cushite involved in this event as well. Let that connection not be lost. And, well, David's response. Well, okay. So we had this battle and a win, right? So look at the joy and victory. And then look as far away as you possibly can. And then in the distance, you're going to see the heart of David. There's a song, right? The link to the description is below. I suggest you give it a listen because I think it does a good job. I really do think so in capturing a bit of the psalm that David will eventually write about this very event we're talking about. The loss of the usurper, yet it's still his son, Absalom. So thanks for with us tonight, another episode of Outside the Class as we continue to explore the second scroll of Samuel on the Dusty Feet.